Welcome to today's video. Bonus section. One of the activities that I'll do when I come up here is, if I'm here on the right night, which is a Monday night, I will join Terrell at the campground where she plays games with her friends that meet at the campground. They meet every Monday night to play games. So since I was here on Monday night, I joined her. One of the ladies there, when she realized I was in Maine just to get yarn, offered to give me yarn. When I arrived home today, the yarn was added to the stash that I have in this room area right here. I decided I was going to show you what that yarn was. Carlene, if you're watching this, thank you very much. I'm very grateful that you thought of me. So I have no idea what's in these bags. So we're going to find out together. She gave me 2 paper bags full of yarn. I have this blue yarn right here. It feels like an acrylic. It's a bit rough, but it is a very nice color. It's a worsted weight yarn. It's pretty thick. You've got a gray in the same texture and same size. I'm not sure if I would put these two together. The blue is slightly softer than the gray, but they are very similar in that regard. And we have some fun fur. Oh, she got this from Martin's. You know, I got yarn from Martin's like about 5 years ago. Maybe even longer than that, honestly. And I saw this green yarn that I loved at Martin's. And I was like, okay, let me buy up as much of this yarn as I can. So I bought like 12 skeins. I've made like 3 projects with that. And I still have more. I'm pretty sure there's at least one video on this channel that has a project using that yarn. And this is the Fun Fur from Lion brand. This was really big like when I was around 10 years old. Like 11 or 12 years old actually. Definitely more of a knitting yarn. It's fun. We have another fur yarn here. Ooh, this is even softer. Plymouth Yarn Elegante Italian collection. Ah, yeah. You can kind of see there's just like a little fringe here. That's the main part of the yarn right there. This is so soft. I mean, this is kind of rough. This is like, ooh, snuggle, snuggle. It's a beautiful yellow too. It's like a nice long fringe. Ah! So this is a desiccated skein. Like one that's been used and you didn't quite finish it yet and it's from a center pull. Hand knitting yarn, Famous Makers Odd Lots. 100% acrylic. This looks like a brown. Yeah, it's actually a little bit easier to see on the screen than in person. Well, the screen makes it look a little bit more purple, but I still think it's a brown. Does it say? No. Like, look at this label. Like, this is an old yarn label. You don't really see labels like that anymore. Yeah, I've never seen Famous Makers before. I'll have to look them up. Ooh. There's no skein wrapper on this, but this is super soft. This is a furry yarn. Look at that. Just a little something to make a taste with. Or add as like an accent to something. It's a pretty blue though. Oh my gosh. You know what? Could pair it with that. Ooh, I see a green. Look at that green. Oh my gosh. Super thin yarn. I can see there's like mixed with a black stripe. I mean, this is definitely a wool of some type. I kind of want to say mohair, but I don't know for sure. It feels a bit rougher than mohair typically feels. But I think there's more of that yarn in there actually. Yeah, several more skeins. Or cakes like that. These are cakes. So, we have a project not completely frogged here. This was a knitting pattern. It looks like there were some increases done. Let me see if I can show you here. You see how it's kind of like bent like that? That bend usually happens when you increase in the yarn. Because if this was a flat piece of knitting, it wouldn't bend like that. Well, I mean, it's worked flat, but this was meant to have a curve in it. Probably to go around and become like a sock or a wristlet, maybe? I'm not going to take that out just yet. We'll wait for later, yeah. We have a third cake of this. We now have something to make a hefty project with this. Because I can already tell from how big this is and how thin the yarn is, there is quite a lot in here. We have to work it kind of airy in order to make it like softer. Because I feel like if I can already tell from the way that this is super packed tightly, if I make this yarn too tight, it's going to feel rough. But if I add some airiness to it, it's going to feel softer. Ooh, we got some boucle yarn here. Red Heart Casual Cotton Blend 5. This is bigger than worsted weight. This is bulky. But you can see we got the boucle yarn action here. It's like a nice blue, white, brown mix. Yeah, 61% acrylic, 29% cotton, 10% polyester. It is very casually cotton if it's only 29% cotton. We have another one here. Same thing, but a different thing. More brown. But like a rich brown, there's like streaks of red in there. Oh yeah, the typical Red Heart description of how to get the center pull. We have some purple wanting to come out. More of the fun fur yarn. Ooh. Oh, this is not just fun fur. This is eyelash. Or closer to an eyelash. Very sparingly. Can you see that? It might be easier to crochet with that. Usually when yarn's like this, it's difficult to crochet with, but because it's so sparingly, it might be easier to see some of the stitches. We have some more fun fur. Blue. This is like the third light blue that I pulled out. She really likes light blue. Or this is more of an aqua, actually. Like this is like a sky blue. This is like an aqua. I actually have some cotton yarn, this exact color. If I pair the two together, it could create something nice because I used the aqua yarn just to make a headband, and I didn't use up too much of it, honestly. Oh, this doesn't have the skein, but I can already tell this is the casual cotton again. This one just got wrapped into a ball. And this is like pink, green, and white. You know, these could turn into some nice frogs. There's enough for at least one frog, if not two. Usually a typical skein has enough for 2 frogs, provided the skein is hefty enough. Like a 100-gram skein usually gives me about 2 frogs. We have more fun fur. More of the super soft snuggly stuff. Oh, the whites are slightly off. I don't know if you can tell it here, but this one's slightly brighter than this one. This one makes me think it's more of a cream or an off-white, while this is more of a bright white. But this is the same yellow as the other one. 4 stitches equals 1 inch gauge for US 10 needles. Those boys are thick, the US 10 needles. They're like that circumference. Ooh, we got another Lion Brand one. Amazing. That's what this one's called. You know, I haven't seen this particular description for the yarn, but what this reminds me of is the landscape yarns that Lion Brand makes. Because it has the same rough feel, but the same colorway type of dyeing. Like, I think Lion Brand still makes it. I think they just renamed it to landscape. Yeah, because this is called Mesa. Mesa would be the perfect landscape name. I've used the landscape yarns. They're pretty nice to work with. They are a bit rough, but the colorways look amazing. That's where Lion Brand goes crazy with their ombres. Oh, we got a big boy here. Or big girl. Bernat. Oh, this is an old Bernat. Bernat labels don't look like this anymore. This looks like a baby yarn. Yeah, there's a baby on it. Coordinates. No dye lot. Yeah, instructions on the reverse. Sport weight. Okay, sport weight means it's thinner than worsted. You know, I had a lot of yarn like this in the past. I think I had yarn similar to this when I first started knitting. I don't think Bernat made it though. I think it was a different company. I don't remember. It was like this boucle-ish type of yarn with a streak through it. This one's very pretty. This one's interesting. Ah, it's speckled. Can you see like the light blue marks here? Ah, this is a 3-ply yarn, and one of the plies is an eyelash yarn or a fur yarn, and the other 2 are the regular like worsted weight yarns, which is why it has this odd look. Fur yarn doesn't usually have this look. That's intriguing. That is really intriguing. Ooh, this one's in a plastic bag. There are 3 balls of more fun fur in here. Purple this time. I don't know how obvious it is. If I hold up that other one, you can see how brown and purple look very, very similar. Depending on the light, but I'm pretty sure this is brown and this is purple. Yeah, 3-pack, 89 yards each. There's a dye lot. It's bulky, but it's a worsted weight. Oh, this is also another Martin's one. If you're wondering how I'm able to tell the different thicknesses of the yarn, if you see this diagram here, this is pretty standard. It goes from 1 to 7, and the bigger the number, the thicker the yarn is. So if you use like a fingering weight yarn, it starts at 1. The middle is worsted weight. That's 4. DK weight's like 3. And then when you get to like the super bulky stuff, that's 7. That doesn't count for yarn that requires like a 10 pull as a knitting needle. That's on its own different scale. Just yeah, this has never left the bag, which means it's probably still in good condition. I can tell that a lot of these yarns have been sitting around for a while. Some of them simply by the feel, and others of them by the labels, because like the Bernat label is definitely not the label that Bernat uses nowadays. And using older yarns is definitely a different adventure, because even though it is weaker, you can get some textures that you never knew existed. Here we just have a simple worsted weight yarn. Nice dusty purple color. I can tell from the way that this is wound and from how thin this is, either she started with a center pull and then she frogged her project and then just wrapped it back around the skein again, which is often what happens when you frog a center pull project because you can't stuff it back in the middle, or she took it from the outer end, then it got tangled and she had to wrap it back around again. This was definitely used then taken apart again. Oh, and this yarn also, I don't know if you can see that. That's pretty rare. It looks like it got burned or is dissolving. when I use the yarn to make something, I'm probably going to cut that part out, and then if it's in the middle of a project, and weave the ends in, because I wouldn't want that showing on a finished project. But it's such a small defect that I can easily just cut it out and still use the rest of the yarn. Like, that's literally 0.0001% of the yarn. I can tell from the feel that it's an acrylic. It's an acrylic that's been around for a really long time because it's a bit rough. It has like that old acrylic feel. Oh yeah, there are old acrylic feels. So there's the old acrylic that's been in a skein feel versus the old acrylic that's been in a finished project feel. The one that's been in a finished project feel tends to be softer. We have some snowflake here. This is a fuzzy furry Chanel yarn, Northland. I've never seen that brand before. 100% polyester, yeah. It feels like polyester. Very pretty colors. I love the color here. It's very nice, yeah. Worsted weight. Feels super soft. I just want to like squeeze it. I could spend the rest of the night squeezing this. Well, except I'd have to fall asleep, but I could fall asleep squeezing this. We have more snowflake. This one's just straight up purple. This one's not variegated. It's slightly different. Because you can see here, this has a fringe effect. Well, this has a fringe effect too, but it's a different type of fringe. Honestly, these go together. These were probably bought together to form the same project. I could see myself using them together the same project. Yeah, 100% polyester still. Feels like there's more in here than there was in the variegated one. This looks slightly bigger. And I don't think any yarn was used from here because maybe some yarn was used from here. But the reason why I'm thinking there isn't yarn used from here is the band still fits pretty snugly. The band's not falling off. If a significant amount of the yarn had been used, the band would have fallen off. We have more of the snowflake. Oh man, now we have enough of the snowflake to make something decent with it, like something big. Maybe a vest. Could be a pretty sharp vest. Cozy vest. We have this stunning purple. Oh, softy chunky. I feel like Bernat still sells this, but this is not what their label looks like anymore. Yeah, this is all acrylic. Feels a bit rough, but it's not so rough that I don't want to touch it, which is nice. I'm very thankful that she appears to have had a touch for the acrylic yarn, because as rough as acrylic is, cheap wool is a lot rougher. Wool you want to buy like somewhat high end if you want to enjoy touching it. If you just want like the hardy stuff that will survive the thing, then you can get the cheap wool. This feels like a cotton mix. This feels like cotton. This is a nice purple. It's more like a maroony type of purple. Look at how that turns. I don't know how to explain this, but to me that looks like what cotton would unravel like. Acrylic doesn't unravel like that. Wool doesn't unravel like that. Cotton would unravel like that. Or a cotton blend. This feels soft enough that it might be a cotton blend. There are like two different types of cotton. So there's the mercanized cotton, which tends to be rougher and more polished, and then there's the regular cotton. And I think this is the regular cotton. We have more of the snowflake. Definitely have enough for a project with the snowflake there. And the last thing in this bag is this other yarn. It's a worsted weight yarn. It's a 100% acrylic except for potentially the white streak that goes through it. That might be another synthetic plastic. I don't know if you can really see it. Might be able to see it better if I hold it back. Yeah, like right there. You can see like the white stripe. I can't tell if this is a gray or a light purple. It is very nice. So at this point, I'm going to pause to put all these back in the bag before I open up the other bag. Alright, now time for the second bag. The second bag is not filled quite as much. It's still over halfway full. I can't tell if this is just a half-finished project or just a bunch of skeins. So skein. This is the only one that has any writing on it. Sensations from Nako. Twisted combination of eyelets and eyelash. It is 96% polyester and 4% other fibers. Yeah, I could have told you this was synthetic yarn. This is from Joann's. It's made in Turkey. This is the first date we have. This is from 2006. This yarn's 17 years old. If this was released the same date as the copyright, which, for in perspective, the year I'm looking at this yarn is 2023. Let's look at this yarn a little bit closer. Ooh. So they're not wound together very well. I mean, this is the eyelet part, this is the eyelash part. Like, there's no way I would crochet with this. No way. This is a knitting project. I can see how that would look nice. I can see how someone would want to go with that. But I can also see someone wanting to take it apart and just using either one. This might be a more feasible yarn if I were to unwind it all. Unspin it, as we would. There's like these metallic-y things inside the eyelets. You can kind of see them, yeah? That is a very unusual yarn. Very unusual yarn. Ooh, This is an acrylic yarn. Alright, so it looks like it's got like a light blue greenish base, like a sea green base with a speckled color wound through. Like one of the plies is a speckled color. I think it's easier to see it on the actual skein itself than if I held out the yarn, because it's washed out in this atmosphere of blue walls. I don't know why I have this feeling, but I feel like I've had this exact skein of yarn before. Like this exact colorway, this exact texture. I feel like it's something I would have picked up at the craft store. It's interesting. When you buy a yarn like this, it becomes an investment. Or if someone gives you yarn, it becomes an investment. Because sometimes it will take me years to use up a skein because I don't know what it's going to be for, or I use it up for multiple projects. Because if you make something small, you might not use the whole skein, and then it lasts around for a while. And then you kind of just get used to seeing that color yarn, and skeins like, hey, old friend. And I feel like this is very similar to a skein I went, hey, old friend, to. And getting more of it's not necessarily a bad thing, unless it's a color that you hate, but I don't hate that. I love that. Most of the time, it becomes like an old friend that you're kind of glad to see around, and when you use it up, it's kind of sad. We got a yellow here, and this yellow is rough. It looks kind of burnt there. I don't know. Or maybe it just got some dirt. This might be a wool. No, it feels synthetic. It feels really synthetic. I think this yarn's been around for a long time. It's such a pretty yellow. That's quite rough. Is this Darlene? Barlene? Or maybe it's just Arlene? I have no idea if that's supposed to be a letter or not. This is a nice white, or an off-white at this point. Oh yeah, this has been around for a while. Brazil. 25% wool, 75% acrylic. Feels nice. Yeah, wool blend sport. Yeah, it's about the width of a sport. Ooh, is that? I just found a knot. It's close enough to the end that I can undo said knot. I have not declawed yet, so I have the ability to pinch the yarn with my fingernails. Goodbye knot. It's like a basic white. I've never seen this brand before though. That's what's intriguing about this, is this brand. Never seen that type of label. Oh, it's Darlene. It's Darlene. It's right there. I'll have to hold this in a different light because I can't tell if this is a white, a cream, or a yellow. If it's a yellow, it's a really light yellow. It looks a lot brighter on the screen than it does in person. The screen makes it look like a cream. In person, it looks like a yellow. I see what happened with this skein. So you see how we got like the two bumps right here versus the one bump right here. So this was a longer skein. This was possibly like a huge skein of the yarn. This could have been a 1 pounder. See how there's a center pole right here, and then it's kind of like tucked right here. So the previous owner used this as a center pole, got far along in the project, decided to frog it, folded the desiccated skein in half, and then wound the yarn around the desiccated skein. This is like one of the fun bits about receiving yarn that was from someone else's stash, because you get to learn about how they use their yarns, like what their preferences are and solutions that they came across, because I never would have done this, but finding this is hilarious. We have Mary Maxim. This is an old Mary Maxim. I haven't seen Mary Maxim until the Maine Yarn Cruise. And I think I did get some Mary Maxim. Maybe I might got like one skein, but this is not what her labels look like anymore. This is where I'm going to go art history geek on you. Another way that you can tell that these are old labels is the font. This particular font right here, it's a font that shows up on many things that were made in the past, but no one today uses this font. They tend to go for like a sharper font. I'm not sure if I can explain it any better than that, but I know when I see this particular font, I'm looking at something from the past. I'm not looking at something that was made in 2023. Anyway, back to the yarn. Yeah, this is a 2-ply. It's just like two strands wound around each other like this. It's a bit rough. It's 100% Orlan Windtuck acrylic, so it's a particular type of acrylic, Afghan sport yarn. Here's something I've only ever seen show up on old labels as opposed to labels made today. It says that it's moth-proof. Yarns today don't typically mention that they're moth-proof. They're acrylic, and moths are only going to touch wool. I'm making that assumption. I don't know for a fact, but I'm guessing it might have been more of a marketing thing back then, because acrylic is a relatively recent invention in yarn textures. At most it is 200 years old. I doubt it's that. So many people from the past, like especially when this was being sold, they might have been more familiar using wool or other things that moths like to eat. Saying that it's moth proof, like you get this new texture, it's like, what is this? Saying that it's moth proof would make you more likely to buy, going like, oh, I can buy this and moths won't eat it. We have another Mary Maxim here. Cloud spun, chunky weight. This looks like a cloud. Oh my gosh. It's another white, another 2-ply yarn. This one's thicker. This one's softer, much softer. And this is a more recent label. This is something that's been made in the past 20 years. Yeah, yarn, unlike books and DVDs and other things that you cite, yarn doesn't typically tell you the year that it's made. You kind of buy it in the store, assuming that it was made the year you bought it. That is not always the case, but you kind of have to remember when you bought it to kind of remember how old the yarn is. Oh, but this is a nice texture. This could make something nice. This is another acrylic. Alright, so I have an end here, and I saw another end, honestly. Or did I just imagine that? Oh, I could have just imagined that. I think the yarn was just sticking out. Ooh! That's been wound for a while. You see how there's a crease in there? We'll just go back along the crease. It doesn't really matter at this point. I thought I saw a cut end, but I think what I saw part of the yarn sticking out and made me think it was a cut end. But this is 100% acrylic. This is an acrylic that's been around for a while. It's another light blue. I wonder, it's not the same as the other light blue. The previous owner of this had a fondness of light blue, which is good taste. I approve. Now that she needs my approval. Light blue's a good color. This is another acrylic yarn. We got some sort of tinsely thing right here. Like nowadays I know it's called stellina. I don't know if this particular skein, if it is stellina, but we got ourselves a tinsel thing here. The rest of it is clearly acrylic. It's not terribly soft, but it's not rough either. It's like in between. But like that nice little sparkle can give a nice little accent to what would otherwise be a boring white. Kind of makes it look almost gray. And then we got one last thing. We got another Mary Maxim. Oh, it's the same as this, I think. They look the same. They're both loose. So the yarn has been used from both of them. Maybe they were worked together. Sometimes knitters and crocheters will double strand the yarn, so they'll actually take 2 yarns and they'll work them together to get a thicker yarn. And in order to have 2 of the same yarn, both half used, that would be the most reasonable explanation. The other explanation is she bought the first one, used the first one, forgot that she had it, thought she needed to make another project, bought the second one, went halfway through and then realized she had both. I think my first explanation was the more likely scenario. That was the yarn that Carlene gave me. Again, thank you very much, Carlene. I loved looking at old yarns because it's interesting to see like what sticks and what goes away over time, like how the labels are different and how the textures kind of evolve too. And the majority of these will not be going into projects that are meant to be really snuggly. Or like when you get older yarns and you're not sure where they're from, they're not really yarns that you use to give to newborn babies or you use to make products for a customer, but they are yarns that are fun to explore and use and just... You need yarns just to mess around with, honestly. It's kind of like the knitter's version of a sketchbook, yeah? You need to just be able to make the sketch, and you need the ability to make sketches without automatically going to your good materials. That was today's entertainment. Have a nice day.